Good morning. Today I'm going to be interviewing three of my partners, asking some questions to them. The first question, how does a typical language lesson unfold and what are its component parts?
Well, I consider that a typical lesson start by the teacher giving a warm up, then introducing the new class by a video or interactive game according to the content, then give clear explanation to the students in order to follow the activity of the day. Then I give some time for them to finish with the assignment. Later on, we revise it, sometimes in group or individual. It all depends on the contents. Later on, I give like an assessment to finish.
Okay, and what is the component parts?
Well, as I already mentioned, explaining my way of teaching, the first element is the objective, provide students the objective, following the lesson plan, also the activity that we have, the resources or material, and to finish with a closure or assessment.
Second question, as an observer of a class, what should you look for?
Well, as an observer of a class, I consider that the first thing is to see how is the environment, if it's well prepared or not, and then to see if the teacher is following a lesson plan, if the teacher brings the objective to the students. Later, to see if the activity are uh, correct for the age of the students, and also I like to check if the teacher is innovative, because that's something very important to develop a class.
Third question, what is the difference between an approach and a method? Provide examples.
Well, I consider it's kind of difficult, but I consider that an approach is a series of principles, beliefs, or ideas that we use to give explanation of the natural order of a language, while a method is something more specific. It gives us a plan. It provides all the things that we need to follow to develop a class, it provides the activities, the teacher role, the student's role, and so on. For example, when we use the grammar translation method, you know that there are many methods and approach, but when we use, for example, the grammar translation method, we need an approach to teach grammar. For example, deductive or inductive approach.
Fourth question, according to the task-based language teaching, what are the main characteristics of an effective task?
Well, as the task-based, it focuses on speaking in a natural way. The principal part is that the task that we provide to our students most focus on that, giving the students clear explanation that allows them to use the language in a natural way, not focusing on grammar rules.
And finally, the last but not least, the fifth question, what kinds of tasks and activities are appealing and challenging to teenagers?
Well, as teenager, I like demanding. I consider that role plays are good for them. Also, activity that, for example, organizing sentence structure, working on pair, or maybe working in group.
A typical lesson plan unfolds when the teacher can complete all the objectives of any topic that he's going to do in the class. What are the components of this lesson? Well, they need to have a great objective of the day. What is the main purpose of this activity for today? And what we're going to learn during this time teaching a new lesson. Then we need to have a warm up activity that can motivate a student, can cultivate them interested in learning the lesson for today. Lesson activities like activities that can help the student during the process of the learning of new language or learning a new topic that we are going to do during this class for today. One procedure like step by step that will help the student and also the teacher to do the activity in pairs or individually in order to develop all the strategies and activities that will help to the teacher with a topic that they're going to develop. One interaction format that could be like in pairs or in group or in individually making some question and a conclusion that is going to be the reflection of what they learned during the process, during the class. Remember, the most important part of the lesson plan is the time that we're going to do to spend during the lesson. As an observer, I will look for the interaction with the student and the teacher, how they can connect the idea and how they can accomplish all the objective of the class for the day. The interaction and the learning process of the activity. How is the student feeling? They feel good, they feel bad, they're bored, or they're interested and motivated in the class. The difference between an approach and method is that a method is the way of how step by step you're going to do or you're going to apply and the approach that you have selected. The approach is the procedure of the nature of the subject that you're going to be taught. But the method is the way of how to teach, of the way of how you want to teach that topic that you have selected. Referring to this, an approach is the cause, but the method is the effect. As an example, if we're gonna teach some classes like the numbers in English and the alphabet, we are going to do all the investigation that are going to be touched. That is the approach. But the way I'm going to teach this is the method. For example, if I'm going to use some games, I'm going to use a song, I'm going to use some image, I'm going to use the plain form. That is the method of how I'm going to teach. The approach that I have selected, that is the numbers or the alphabet. The main characteristic of an effective text is when the student can be connected with others. Remember that text-based language teaching refers to the communication between the student, the student and between the teacher. In this case, the most and the main characteristic is that can be communicating the language. Use the language itself, like to work in group that can speak about any topic that you're going to teach, or in pairs, but using the speaking way, like listening and speaking, and the interaction through communication. The most challenging activity that can be referring to teenagers is to share and to communicate, to interact with others that are new. For teenagers, it's too difficult to talk to the people with a different way. Remember that in our classroom we have diverse type of students. For teenagers, it is difficult for them to speak in another language with other students that cannot manage the language. That is the most difficult and the most challenging activity that can be present for teenagers. To communicate in another language with students they cannot or they don't know. They are the first time or they are sharing, they not share so much.
A typical language lesson often unfolds in a structured manner designed to maximize learning and engagement. The components of a lesson are the warm-up, the introduction of the lesson, the presentation, the objective, the practice, the production, the feedback, the review and summary, and the last part, the assignment and closing. As an observer of a class, there are many aspects that I have to consider. The first one is the lesson structure and flow, the teacher methods and techniques, the assessments and the feedback, and also that I think that is very important is the classroom environment. Oh well. The difference between an approach and a method is that an approach refers to theories and beliefs about language learning and teaching, while a method refers to specific instructional practices and techniques to implement an approach. For example, the audiolingual method and the direct method. The main characteristics of an effective task are goals, authenticity, communication, language skills, motivation, evaluation, engagement, and flexibility. What tasks are effective for teenagers? Let me see. Yes, for teenagers, the most effective tasks are project-based tasks, collaborative tasks, creative tasks, technology tasks, research tasks, problem-solving tasks, and I think that one of the most, all the tasks are important, but I consider this very important. And that is the real world and community task.